everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thank you for spending some time with me this morning. I'm getting kind of a late start and I'm a little slow today. I read somewhere that Mercury's in retrograde again, which always seems to be bad news. I don't know what it means astrologically, but yikes. So today I'm going to do kind of a follow-up for what I did last week with the Halvesies, where I did a log cabin block for half of the block and then did just some crumb quilting on the other side. And I have a plan for how I'm going to use the other half of this log cabin block, which may lead into other things. And my thought for it is to use 1.5-inch squares. Years and years and years ago, I went on an antique walk in a small town near where I live, and there was a store that had old, if not antique, quilts. I saw her. One of the quilts was hammered into the wall with nails. Nailed into the wall, I guess, with a rusty nail, and it just hurt my soul. So I rescued as many quilts as I could from her before she started doing that to them. And one of them was a postage stamp quilt, which is just small squares, usually 1-inch squares that are just sewn together. This particular one alternated with a white or cream color, and it just, I don't know, spoke to me, I guess. It was fairly early on in my quilting career. And I decided that I would like to make a quilt, a postage stamp quilt, but I didn't want to do the same as that one. So I decided that I would do a quilt that had 1-inch finished squares, was very scrappy, but was 9 patches all put together. So I started this years ago. I can't even tell you how long ago. I'm pretty sure I don't want to tell you, even if I know. But I'll post a photo of this much of it in full, such as I have so far. And honestly, it gets set aside and nothing done on it for a while, often. It's been going on for a long time. So I started collecting 1.5-inch squares. Oh, look, I have some started. Awesome. I should look more often. So I filled this tin and then it wouldn't close. So then I just started putting them in a bag. So I have a little more here. I have more of these than I do 2.5-inch squares. So it's time for me to be using some of those. And I'm also back and forth about whether or not I cut 1.5-inch squares from scraps. I generally do, like 5-inch if I have it, and then 2.5-inch, and then if it's smaller than that, I'll do 1.5-inch. So for those 9 patches, I just sometimes sit down and start going through all of them, and generally they're in there. I've cut a bunch of them from a strip, for example, and I'll just take 4 of one and 5 of another and group them together so they'll be ready to sew. And when I'm cutting them, I will usually not cut 1.5-inch squares if I can't get at least 4 squares of that fabric, because for a 9 patch I need a minimum of 4, and then eventually I'm going to need some 5s to go with it. And then I just sort of put those all together in a bag, and these have a lot of neutrals waiting. And then they're just ready to sit down and have me just sew a bunch of them. And I just sew 9 patches, and then I sew them into strips. I don't pay any attention to what's next to it. If it's a similar color, I've got 2 purples next to each other here and 2 blues there. If they were the same fabric, I wouldn't put them next to each other, but otherwise, I just don't care. I'm just putting them together. And I really like the overall look of that. There's something about 1.5 inches that's a little bit yikes, but also it's such a scrappy mishmash. I really like it. but the 9 patch brings a little bit of order to it, which is good for my librarian soul, like a little organization. So my thought today is to do something with 1.5 inch squares, and I can use 1.5 inch squares that are not, that I don't have 4 or 5 of. So as I count out, say on this one, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have some left over, but not 4. So I could use that. Maybe there's 4 in there, but we're gonna pretend there aren't. Oh, a red and white one. Red, pink, and white. Wouldn't that be fun? I don't know if I have enough of those. So that one, actually, there's 4, but here are a couple of those. And this one has 4, but for our purposes, it's not as if I don't have enough of other things. I can use those. See if there's any other reds and whites I have here. Pardon me while I scrounge around. A lot of my 1.5 inch squares are from more traditional fabrics than I often use now, because I started doing these a long time ago. And here's a 1.5 inch strip I could cut. Could do that. See if I have any pinks in here. Here are some pinks, kind of pinks. Yeah, we'll see. And just go through and pick out some reds and whites from here. Here's some more reds and whites. Probably be more Christmas than Valentine's Day, but all of that. So I'm just going to go through and pull some of these out. You don't have to watch and listen to me doing that. And I will be back when I've got a pretty good selection. I have a selection now. This one's kind of cool. It must have been from the All Iowa Shop Hop fabric a few years ago. It has the names of some Iowa towns and various quilt shops on it. It's cool. All right. This just isn't going to work. It's too dull, so I'm putting that back in the bin or the bag. Pretty soon it's going to be going to a full-size trash bag, I think. Now, how am I going to do this? Lots of ways. I could do funky things, of course, and I might at some point. But to begin with, I think I'm just going to do kind of a grid of red and white. We're dealing with pretty small pieces here. Slicing and dicing them much more would be, I don't know, they'd be very tiny pieces. I'm not opposed to that, but let's explore some, shall we say, faster options to begin with. Put in some pink here. I don't have very much pink, but I will try to spread some around. In fact, let's put another pink one up here. Of course, when I cut it, it's going to be apart from each other, but we're not going to worry too much. We are just playing, trying things out. Might use the back side of one, maybe. Give it a little different pink. Might be kind of a fun little, a sweet little quilt for somebody who likes pink. And I need it to be about like that. So I think I need probably a couple more rows, because by the time I get the seams in there, it will be considerably smaller. I'm going to sew these all together, and I'll see. I think I may need another row each way, but I will put this much together and be back with you. If you're on my newsletter list, in the last newsletter you saw this handy dandy felted wool piece that makes it easier to press seams open. I'm pressing seams open here because there's so much white and the red is going to shadow through so easily. So I'm pressing them open so that light fabric is on light fabric. And I will go onward, and I really love this thing. I'll put a link to it below. Mine took quite a while to come. They couldn't get the wool in for whatever reason, supply chain, I don't know. I don't know what it's like now, but they really are. It was worth the wait. It's a really handy gadget. Many of you are experienced quilters, but in case there are some newer quilters watching, this is an ideal time to be using chain piecing where you don't break your thread in between each seam that you do. So to begin, I had these all laid out. To begin with, I just went down the line, put these two together, didn't break the thread, put these two together and fed it through the machine, then these two, etc., all the way down. Then I broke the thread and came back, and the next row was all in order. So all I had to do was pick that up, flip it over, didn't break the thread, etc. So that's a really good way to do something like this where you've got a lot of seams. Saves thread, saves time, saves headache when things don't go together the way you want them to. Now that I have all of these hanging together, then I can just, and the seams are pressed, so I can just fold them back, line up the seams, and stitch each of these rows then. If you are pressing seams open and you have pressed these seams open, so you want to do these as well, this thread, this has already been sewed, so if you want to open up this seam to press it open, then you're going to have to release a thread here. So all I do is go in with the seam ripper and just pull it, and it's going to unravel some. You unstitch some from there, but you need for it to do that in order to press the seam open, and this cross seam is going to stop that unsewing. So now it can be pressed open. You won't have that problem if you've been pressing them to one side or the other. It won't matter that that's already sewed. I think I may as well just have left it running. Here's one of the reasons that I like this over doing it on a flat surface, and I'm using a thick felted wool pad for my pressing in general. But if I were pressing this flat, as I was pressing this, my iron might inadvertently press that back up. This way, that's out of the way, so that when I press it, that's the only part that I'm working on. So that's a distinct advantage of this. And here we are. You could, of course, be doing this with 2.5-inch squares, but the 1.5 I thought better fit with the scale of this block, or the size of the block. And it's a little bit shy of being as large as I would want it. I'd probably do another row, maybe 2. But this will give us the idea of how that would look. Now with this one, because I've got white and black, or white and red here, then I could cut this and place it so that the red is here, and maybe I wouldn't really need, if you remember on last week's, I had this strip to sort of give the eye a rest before it hit the crumb quilting. I don't know that I would need that here because this is fairly ordered. And if I can put the boundary up to here, that would be good. This might be better in this case as maybe a black and white. Could be a red. That might make a kind of interesting little peek into this side of it to have that piece be red. So that's definitely a possibility. This is kind of looking like a basket quilt, isn't it? With this, the bottom part of the basket, and this, the blossoms or whatever's in the basket. So that's a little bit of a wonky take on a basket quilt. Now, what else could we do with this after we have, maybe after we have cut all that? I could do something like rim it in white or red, but I think that's, ooh, although maybe I don't have any white or red fabric handy around me. Let me see what I've got. Well, what I have discovered is that I don't have very many red, modernish kinds of fabrics. Who knew? If I put a red rim around here, and bearing in mind that that can be wonky cuts, it's going to be kind of hard to do unless I cut strips. So let me cut some strips. Okay, so I cut some strips and I was going on without you. I'm sorry, I forgot the camera wasn't on. You could, I need some longer white strips, which I don't have at the moment, so I'm just going to fake it here. We could do Funky Log Cabin logs out here. And then maybe put another strip here and kind of tie that in with what's going on. That's 2 strips, I think. No, let me do another pink. So that just pulls it into the center of what else is going on. It's not horrible. Don't hate it. I'm sitting here looking at this and thinking, you know, you could make a funky heart out of it. Do something over here that turns that into more of a heart shape. Anyway, it's a whole other day. I think that might actually be okay. This, I would want to put something red there. Let me find a red. What do I do with the red squares? Here we go. Let's say we, no, not that one. How about this one goes in here instead of that blue, and then that pulls those 2 more together. So I think I might do that in this case. What do you think? I know some of you are shouting out to me. What do you think? I'm almost this, I don't know, thinking, wouldn't this be kind of fun as a little more dimensional where that wraps over? Never mind. I blame it on Mercury. Why does Mercury get the bad rap? What if Saturn's in retrograde? What does that mean? I don't know. Shall I give it a go? What the heck? Why not? And I could get to a point where, say with this first log, maybe this first white one, I then meet up with this, and then I start doing these that actually extend past this. I don't know if that I explained that very well. I could also swap out and do the black and white over here, and red, pink, and white over here. That might be a little much. Then if I were making a quilt out of this, I could do different colors here. So it might be purples and lavenders, yellows and golds, red and pink, green and green, green and light green. That might be kind of interesting. I think I'm going to go ahead and do this. But before I do that, let me put those so I kind of remember where they are. I'm going to swap that out. But you could also do any of the things that we've been doing with the 2.5 inch squares. Cutting and splicing something into there. Maybe there would be a black and white strip in there. I don't know. Maybe. Let's try it. Do I have a black and white strip here somewhere? I have narrower black and white strips. Let me And if I put something across like that, it might, I was gonna say it's just gonna compete with this, but I don't know. Might be interesting to extend it out. It would be a narrower strip, I think. Although I do have at least one viewer who probably would want the wider strip, which is okay. We're playing. You can do whatever you want. I got plenty of that fabric. Honestly, I'm going to just cut a strip and cut it narrower just to see how it looks. So I could do something like this. And that looks like suspenders on it, which may or may not be a good thing. Don't like that for sure. I think it's too distracting. Now a plain white strip maybe, or a plain red strip, or a plain pink strip might. I could also slice this and shift it so that it's a little, you know, kind of wonky. Just thinking about my options here. That might be kind of fun. What if I intersperse some 2.5 inch squares in here? I don't know that I have any 2.5 inch. Yes, I do. Right here. The scale may not be right. It might be too large a piece. And obviously this is going to be bigger than 2.5 inches, but say we slide this in here. That would give the eye a little more resting room if you're feeling like it's too much with all of those small squares. It's just whatever your eye is happy with. Put this in here, that's a little distracting. Or maybe if you have a print that you really like, a 2.5 inch square with a really fun print that you like, you could work that into it without cutting it up too much. Anyway, lots of choices. Maybe we'll explore some another day, but for today, I'm going to go with these wonky strips on the side just to continue the log cabin look, but with a little break in here. And then I'm going to do something else in there. I will put something in. I wonder if I want this pink and white thing, and then it would pull in both. And I think I do. I think I do want that one in there. So I will fix that and then start adding on some logs here. Maybe some curves, we'll see. And I think that's going to work. I'm now at the point where I'm going to cut this in half diagonally. I'll still have another bit to work with to do something else, which may be another log cabin thing or may not. So I'm going to cut this diagonally and then sew these two together, and I'll be back. When I originally planned it out, I thought I would do more of the red, so this would have been set down further. I actually like this because it mimics this little bit here. Kind of goes off the rails there, but it's all right. It's part of the wonky. I think I might like that better than I did the other one. And I have pressed the seam this way because there are fewer seams, so fewer really bulky spots. Now, at this point, I think I am ready to do another round of logs here. If I can find my other red strip. I tell you, sometimes my work table when I'm filming looks like the Julia Child's floor must have looked when she was tossing everything there. And now these are going to start to cross these. I have an option then, perhaps, of moving these. I don't think I like that. That's pushing it, I think. I will add those 2 logs on. That may be it. We'll see. I think that is going to be my final round on this. I've left these a little bit wider because I'm not sure yet how I would square these up, if I might in fact square them up or just leave them a little bit wonky. This one's actually not terribly wonky in the end. I even have the words upside down, unless you do it this way. Doesn't matter. That is it for what I'm going to do with 2.5-inch squares, 1.5-inch squares, habits. And I still have another half of this that I might play around with next time. Might do more dreaming and scheming with 1.5-inch squares, all of which could be done, as I said, with 2.5-inch squares. But for today, this is going to be it. It's a little bit different look from this. In a way, it's a little more controlled, of course, because this is a planned color scheme out here. But I really do think that if you did these in different colors, so you had purples and reds and greens and yellows, I think that would be a fun quilt and a way to use up all of those 1.5-inch squares that I have. Because even if I do a super king size 9-patch quilt with all of them, I think I'll still have plenty left. That's it. That's my rambling. I'm finished now. I hope to see you on Sunday when I'll be doing who knows what, or on Wednesday again when I'll play with some more 1.5-inch squares. In the meantime, of course, be well, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.